Hello there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today I'm going to show you some techniques for hemming and finishing off corners. Even though a pattern might not give you specific instructions for a mitered corner, if you know a few skills you might be able to swap those in and get a better finish. So for example, if you're making a dressing gown and you've got a facing and then a hem turn up, you could maybe put a double folded corner on there, or you could put a single folded corner and you'll get a much better point and finish on the inside. You can also use it on a wrap, you can use it on the fronts of shirts, or you can use it if you're making homeware like a table mat or tablecloths or napkins. I'm going to show you 3 ways. I'm going to show you a single hem, a double folded hem, and how to do a corner on a mitre with bias binding tape. Just because some people ask, today I'm wearing the Grainline Studio Linden sweatshirt, but this is a sort of spring weight sweatshirt. So the sleeves are made of cotton jersey, like a t-shirt material, and the front is a leftover piece of viscose. And because the viscose has a little bit of stretch in it, I can use it on the front, but I get the stretch around my shoulders from the cotton t-shirt fabric. So it's quite a nice hash up. If you've got a favourite piece of fabric, you can insert it into the centre of the Linden sweatshirt. You might see bits of footage from other projects today because I've been collecting every time I sew a corner. Let's get started straight away. Okay, for a single folded hem, which you use if you've got ability to overlock or serge the edges, because you won't be turning under a raw edge, you'll be leaving that edge finished with a stitch, like an overlock stitch or an overcast stitch. This method is particularly good if you've got a fabric that's really thick. So if you've got something like terry toweling, fleece, waffle fabric, and you're making a dressing gown or a split hem on a sort of chunky jumper, then you can use this to turn up a really wide hem but without the bulk. So you turn in a 3.5 centimetre or whatever you want hem and press it right side to right side, and you're going to just pin that in place. This is just a sample, but you would be pinning all along your front facing and all along your hem. And you don't pin this corner, you leave this corner sort of open, and then you pinch the corner together and you match up the 2 hems. So you match up the lower hem with the front facing hem here, and you pinch it and you get a sort of triangle. And then you fold the fabric back and match up the 2 folds. So you have this sort of triangle. Let me do that again. Pinch a triangle and then put the fabric wrong side to wrong side with the folded edges together. And you're going to be sewing along here, and it's not so it catches any of your fabric, but just this spare fabric. See if I can mark it for you so that you can see it. So you're going to sew from the very corner out, and then that will give your mitered line. When you've sewn it, you will then be able to turn it through and press it to the right side, and it gives a really neat corner. You can poke the corner out with your point turner, and if you were working with a very thick fabric, then you can cut off this excess fabric. You can work the end out with a pin if you really want to get a really sharp point. And then repress. And that is a single folded hem to create a really sharp corner. For a double folded hem, you need to work from the wrong side. So this is quite a large hem, just so that you can see it. This is 25 mil, 2.5 centimeters long. So I have folded down 2.5 centimeters and pressed, and folded down another 2.5 centimeters and pressed. And I've done that on both planes. So my miter corner will be over here. Just so that you can see, you will get a square in that corner, and I've drawn it, and I've put a line diagonally from corner to corner, and that's the spare fabric that we're going to cut off. We're left with this little right angle triangle. I've traced that onto the reverse of the fabric. You won't be able to see it because the fabric is patterned, but I can see my triangle that I have on the wrong side on the right side. And now I can fold my fabric using that triangle. So I've got the apex of the triangle just here, and that's going to be my corner point. Those lines from that triangle line up with my fold line. So I'll show you what I mean. So here's my apex where the miter corner is going to end. That's going to be the point, and this line runs into this fold line, and this line runs into this fold line. I've pressed that down so that I can work with the rest of the fabric and it won't keep pinging up. And now I'm going to refold all of those fold lines, and this encloses the raw edge of the fabric, and I can pin that in place. And now those two folds are meeting along the miter edge. I can give that another press before I put it under the machine, and then I can take my stitch line and sew along the hem. Here's the corner sewn. So I've sewn up to this corner and along. You can see this one's still open, and it's because it's such a really big hem. But if you were doing a small one, you would sew into that corner and it would hold it down, but I've just done a bigger one for you to see. If you had placemats and you had a really wide hem like this, you could just hand stitch the ends. It's really good, this technique, if you haven't got an overlocker or a serger and you want to enclose your raw edges but still have a miter corner. This next one is to sew the corners on something that you're going to bind. So I've just quilted up a piece of this fabric. Actually, it was super easy to quilt because it has a diamond pattern on, so I didn't have to do any marking out. It was an absolute joy. I just put the two pieces together. I used a spray glue to attach the wadding, so it was all nice and flat, no pins, no marking, and then I put it straight under the machine and sewed the diamonds on. This is going to be a placemat, and I'm going to put a binding around the outside. I'd like it to have mitered corners, so the first thing I need to do is to just go and square it up so that each corner is definitely a right angle before I start. And we're going to sew along to the corner, and this binding width is 1 centimetre. So I'm going to stop 1 centimetre from the edge. And then when I've got to there, I'll show you how to fold the corner. So I've sewn in white thread, to 1 centimetre from the end. If I'd carried on another centimetre, I would have gone off the fabric. So I've got 1 centimetre from this edge, 1 centimetre from this edge. I'm going to fold my binding to make a square in this corner. The raw edge of the binding is now following the edge of the mat, and I'm going to sew 1 centimetre from the end. So underneath this square is the point to which I sewed to before, and I will carry on sewing from here all the way down to the end so that I can repeat in the other corner. Let me show you that fold one more time. It sort of makes this angle that we want here, going from off the edge of the fabric. That's the fold. And it's best to do them one at a time so you don't get any puckers or adjustments in your fabric lengths. You can keep sewing these and fold the end under if you want. So you can fold it under like this, lay this one on top, and you will get a join, a straight join. Sometimes it's a little bit bulky under here, so there's a different way that you can do it, which is you leave quite a big opening so you don't sew to the end. And then you find a sort of midway point of where you would finish sewing. Keep all the bindings lined up. So let's say here, let's eyeball it a bit. And then you're going to join those two marks together. But instead of just joining them straight, which you can do, you can join it straight there, press it open and then close up the hole, and that would give quite a good finish, because it would mean that this wouldn't slip at an angle either way. You can also do it with a bias corner, so you would get the same sort of matching shapes around the outside that you'd have here for your mitre, here where my fabric has a join. So the next thing to do is to match up those 2 points using a right angle join. We want one of them to be at a 90-degree angle, so I'm going to use that mark that I've made and fold my fabric at 90 degrees. And then I can join the other one at 90 degrees and pin. It feels a little bit fiddly, but you have one coming this way straight, and then you have the other one coming straight, but you'll have a 90-degree angle. And then you can mark it on if you want to. where you're going to sew. Sew it in place and then close up the gap. I've used quite a big stitch there so that you can see it. So from the marking 90 degrees, I can cut off this spare fabric, press it open, and now I can close up the gap, and I will have a 90-degree fold so that when that's folded over, it will just look the same as my other join, which was in the bias binding. Let's go back to the corners and see how we turn those out. Okay, on the corners, you've got your stitch line running up to the corner, your stitch line running up to the other corner, and you're going to flip the binding and keep the one side folded under the other side. And from the reverse, you can make a mitre with that fold of fabric that you have on the wrong side. A little bit fiddly. And now you can either top stitch along here, or I like to zigzag stitch because it gives me a little margin for error. So it gives a decorative finish to the finished placemat. It zigzags over the binding and then it zigzags over the back. Or you can, this is already attached, so you can turn this over and hand stitch this down for a really neat finish. So now you can do a corner on bias binding. You can do a single folded corner with a mitre if you've got a serger, and you can do a double folded corner if you want to enclose the raw edge. And that's how you sew corners. Being able to sew really neat corners is really useful if you're doing a split hem. So on this next project, it's one from a while back, but I made a new look shell top and I needed some splits at the side because I needed more hip room, but I didn't want to have a chunky sort of folded lump at the bottom. So I used a combination of the single folded and the double folded hem because I didn't know I needed the split. I only had a single fold on the seam allowance, but then I could double fold the hem. So this is how I did it. If you've made a top with a split in the side, then you might want to make sure that you have a really nice corner here so that if the edge is showing, then you won't have a little bit poking out or you're trying to wedge in a corner. So the first thing you do is to press up your hem. So I've got a hem here, 1 centimetre folded, another 1 centimetre and pressed. And then I'm going to find out where the corner of my slit hem will finish, and I'm going to poke my pencil in and make a little mark. So this spot here is where I'd like the corner of my mitre to be. I'm going to open out the fabric and fold it in a right angle using that little spot there. So here I should have a right angle. Now I can refold all of that fabric back that I pressed a second ago and pin in place. So I've got a mitered corner. And now you can hem along here, over that corner, up to where you've cut the slit, across, and then carry on around. So when you stitch, you'll be stitching from the wrong side and making sure that you keep the same distance from the hem edge to the turned up edge, and then on the right side you'll have the same distance all the way around. So as you approach the corner, you can use the pin to hold down the corner, hand wheel to the pivot point, lift, turn, and continue, and then this can be pressed at the end so that you get a mitre. You can hand stitch there as well if you want to, but once it's sewn down, sometimes you get a second row of stitching around the outer edge, and sometimes it's hand sewn down. I hope those few techniques will help you to get a really neat corner. If you sew like that, you do reduce bulk. So if you, for example, like I said at the beginning, if you're making a dressing gown and by the time you've sort of turned up some sort of plushy fleece or waffle fabric and you've got your hemband facing, if you can use that single folded hem, you reduce all the bulk at the bottom hem of your garment. We would love to see what you've been making, especially if you've used this technique, but if not, we'd love to see what your project on the go is at the moment. Do share your makes, make an account with us, take a photo, give a little description and share the pattern pairing and fabric that you've been working with. We love to see what everybody's been making. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.